Hey everyone. Today I'm very excited to have a look at New Zealand with you all. These are two maps that a long-term subscriber has sent me, Jack, who lives in New Zealand, and I'm very happy that I can have a look at them with you all. There is one of New Zealand, a travel and touring map with 10 central city and town maps, and another one specifically for Auckland city and districts with a large scale inner city map. It says here that it's a Kiwi owned company. We have a beautiful picture of the mountains with a lake and of a harbour in Auckland. And just want to say I love these little details, like here, quality you can trust since 1967. So I think we're going to start with the mini map, and then we're going to have a look at the Pathfinder later. Let's put that aside for now. So there are two sides. Here we have the South Island. But I would suggest we start with the North Island. Alright, so says up here we're at the North Island. We can see Auckland up here, which is the largest city, but not the capital. The capital was chosen to be Wellington, here all the way on the southern tip of the North Island, right by Cook Strait, specifically because it's closer to the South Island. So basically right at the center. Alright, let's have a little look around. Let's start here at the East Cape. And I'll just tell you a little bit about New Zealand. It is also called Aotearoa, which is a Maori name, and means land of the long white cloud. There are also some other translations, but that appears to be the most common one. And the long white cloud, that might refer to some particular cloud structures you can see on top of Aotearoa, which guided the Polynesians to the islands. And Aotearoa was also the name initially only used for the North Island. And it's actually unclear whether there was a Maori name for basically all of New Zealand today. But yeah, Aotearoa is quite common now. The term New Zealand, on the other hand, comes from a Dutch province which is called Zeeland. And its meaning is pretty much exactly what you would think it is. Zeeland means land by the sea. So it's not completely wrong for the islands. There's not just the North and South Island though. Those are the biggest ones. There are also 700 smaller ones. And all things considered, New Zealand is pretty remote and was one of the last places on Earth where humans arrived. That was only about 800 years ago, which really isn't that long, all things considered. So there was in the 13th century, I think the most likely date is around 1280. But I also feel like when something was so long ago, it's okay to be off by a couple years. Whether that was 1280 or 1290 doesn't change much. And it wasn't too long after that the first Europeans came by, which was Abel Tasman, and over 100 years later, in the late 18th century, James Cook. And there's a couple places named after James Cook. So, as with the name of the country, you will often also find Maori names, especially for landmarks. New Zealand has 3 official languages. Of course, there's English, which most of the population speaks. And then there's also Maori and New Zealand Sign Language. So there's a bit of an oddity in that only Maori and the New Zealand Sign Language are officially listed as official languages. And with English, it's of course de facto an official language, but it's not specifically mentioned as such. I don't think that will really change much though, in terms of its use. Okay, so there was a tour around the island, around the coastline. Probably notice here in the Auckland area there's quite a lot of inlets, small islands. We're going to have a look at that in more detail in a moment. What you surely also notice is that there are quite a lot of places here, cities and towns. In fact, over 75% of the population live on the North Island. And percentage-wise, the population here is still increasing compared to the population on the South Island. So North Island is growing a bit faster. And most of those people live here in the Auckland area. Altogether, there are just over 5 million people on Aotearoa, and 1.5 million live in Auckland. Other large cities are Wellington, here on the North Island, as well as Hamilton and Rotorua. And the second largest city is Christchurch, which is on the South Island. We'll see that in a minute. One part that really stood out to me is right here, near New Plymouth. You can see it almost looks like a huge roundabout around Mount Taranaki or Mount Egmont. So again, that's a landmark that has two different names. And that is one of the volcanoes on the North Island. And I kind of like how it looks like you can inch a little closer if you're curious. Or if you want to be safe, you take the large tour around. And before we turn the map over, I just want to show you one little detail that threw me off at the start. And that's this part right here. For a second I thought there just was one of those smaller islands, one of the 700 islands around New Zealand. But it's just the North Island again, presented on a smaller scale. So you can have a look at the traveling times. It says here, times are in hours and minutes and allow hourly stops of 10 minutes, which is very considerate. So you can see that from Wellington up to Paraparaumu, it's about 1 hour and 20 minutes. Or if you want to go to Woodville, it's 3 hours with 3 10-minute stops. Let's see, from Auckland to Hamilton, it's let's see, so I guess this is 50 minutes and then another hour and 5 minutes. And in fact, over here you can look at the traveling distances. So from Auckland to, let's see, where do we want to go? Tauranga, it's 210 kilometers. And from Whangarei to Wellington, it's 818. So that's almost the entire island. That would be from up here past Warkworth and Takapuna, Auckland, Manukau, Papakura, Pokeno, Huntley, Hamilton. Let's see, Otorohanga, Te Kuiti, take the route here past Tamarunui and Okaona, Taihape, Foxton, Levin, Otaki, and there we are, Wellington. Okay, and from here, let's jump on the ferry and go to the South Island. So again, we have the South Island in a large version and a small version with the traveling times. And you can see here the two largest cities on the South Island are Christchurch and Dunedin. I hope I pronounced this correctly. This comes from Scottish Gaelic and is the name for Edinburgh. So you know that there are a lot of Scottish migrants here. That's one of the interesting aspects also about New Zealand English, which is its own variety of English. It still shows some signs of where people came from, so depending on where you go, you might hear a bit of a different pronunciation. And I think there were also times when it changed quite quickly. So if you're into linguistics, I'm sure this is a really fascinating area to look into. The South Island looks a bit different. This is actually the 12th largest island in the world, so quite impressive. And rather than showing a lot of cities like in the north, we have a very mountainous landscape with the Southern Alps. All the way here from north to south basically. And again, we also have a Maori name, Katiritiri Otemoana. And I hope I'm pronouncing these words close to how they're supposed to be pronounced. We also have the largest mountain of Aotearoa on the South Island. And that's right here. Aoraki or Mount Cook with, let me just check if that's correct. (3,724 meters, so the 3,100 appears for Mount Sefton, and we don't have an indication for Aoraki, unless I just can't see it right now. The highest mountains are also located here on the Southern Island. There are 18 peaks that are over 3,000 meters high, and the highest one's right here, which is Aoraki or Mount Cook, with 3,753 meters. And you can see there's also Mount Tasman right next to it, 3,498 meters. Mount Sefton, 3,157. And we also have a couple of glaciers, like the Fox Glacier and the Franz Josef Glacier. I was quite surprised that the Franz Josef Glacier really is named after the former Austrian emperor. I did not expect that. And I think it's quite obvious that this area was formed by glaciers. When you look here at the form of the lakes and the way the rivers are moving down from the mountains. So quite a beautiful area. If we're going a little further south, we get to the Fjordland National Park. The Fjordland, spelled with an I, and the actual fjords are all called Sound. So here we have George Sound, Castle Sound, Charles Sound, Nancy and Thompson Sound, etc. Now, before we have a quick look at Auckland, let's also look at the sea. We have the Tasman Sea here. And if you continue for about 2,000 kilometers, you get to Australia. And we have the Pacific Ocean over here. It's about 1,000 kilometers north to Nouvelle Caledonie and Fiji. And of course you can see here, such as with this map of Christchurch, that these are quite young cities. Based on how the roads are set. Very, very straight. Just here at the little river, we have a couple of curves. Right in the center. Alright. So and here we have the Pathfinder for Auckland City and Districts. Let's hide the little mini map. So this is a bit larger. And again, we have two sides to the map. But let's have a look at this one here first. There's the North Island here on the side. We can see Auckland's more on the northern part of it. And again, this is one of the details that I just find really fascinating when you look at maps of other places and compare it to the area where you live, and sort of the idea of what's normal in terms of landscape and surroundings. You know, what are you used to in your everyday life? This is very different from what I'm used to. And I find it really fascinating and really curious. You can see that you have a lot of waterways here. And in fact, there are two harbors Aotearoa Harbour from the Pacific, and Manukau Harbour from the Tasman Sea, with the entrance right here and the other one right here. So plenty of areas by the water, plenty of inlets and bays. Granny's Bay, Wesley Bay, Wortel Bay, Blockhouse Bay, Green Bay, Wood Bay, French Bay, etc., etc. There's Little Muddy Creek and Big Muddy Creek, Mill Bay. We have bridges. And we have ferries, of course, like here, Belay Ferry. And then there's quite a couple. Half Moon Bay Ferry, Sealing Ferry, Motuya Island Ferry, Waiheke Island Ferry, there's Waiheke Island and Coromandel Ferry. So you can visit plenty of other places. And you can see there's lots of recreational areas too. These two islands are all green. We have the Riverhead Forest, the Aotearoa Ranges Regional Park, here's another very, very green place with some streams. So here by the sea, and also a little further south, this big regional park, the forest park. We have plenty of information for tourists here, not just the highways, but also the Pacific Coast Highway, the Twin Coast Highway, regional routes, Thermal Explorer. We have walkways and walking tracks, and information on ballooning, bungee jumping, camping and caving, diving and snorkeling, fishing, golf courses. There's some info centers, of course, kayaking and canoeing, the lighthouses, and the Lord of the Rings set locations. I have been looking all over, but just haven't been able to see them. There should be 150 different locations. I don't think that they've marked all of them. But unfortunately, I just haven't been able to find any. Plenty of golf courses, vineyards, not a golf course, but somehow no Lord of the Rings locations. I would have loved to show you where they are, but I'm sure one of you is a big fan and can give us a hint. So there's a couple of caravan parks, mountain biking areas, just general points of interest, like right here next to the Waikato River. You can go surfing, there are thermal areas, tramping, winery and wine growing areas. if we turn this over for a moment? You can see the historic city centre right here. It says Auckland City. And then we can see all the different parts of the city, like water view, Mount Albert, St. Luke's, Morningside, Kingsland, Western Springs, Arch Hill, Mount Eden, and Eden Terrace, and so on. And somehow places like Eden Terrace or Morningside just bring up really specific images. I just picture them as very, very pretty places. Though I know you can't always tell an industrial area by its name. Alright. Let's fold this back up. And there we are. There was our little exploration of New Zealand. Again, thank you so much, Jack, for your lovely gift and letter. Really, really appreciated it. So for today, just want to say thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you again soon. Pour Marie, Kaki.